Hey, thanks for stopping by and taking part. This is going to be a joint conversation with Mike, Skipper, Arthur, and I. It's going to be showing on my platforms, and it's going to be showing on all of the Veteran Nation platforms as this goes forward. On how do I want to say this? The United States ally on Israel on the day of the 8th of June of 1967 attacked and attempted to sink the United States, the USS Liberty. She was a solo ship monitoring the Six-Day War. And the state, if you will, the federal government of the United States spent a massive amount of time subsequent to that attack covering up that attack, and they have done their level best to, for lack of better terminology, not really ever acknowledge what happened or really told the full story of that day. So a while back, I was listening to some other podcasts, and I became aware of the guests that we're going to have, that Skipper and I are going to be having on today. And I said, we've got to get these guys on. We've got to tell their story. And it ties in really well with my normal content here on Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, and it also ties in really well for Veteran Nation, which is why we're going to be doing this as a joint show. So I'm going to bring Skipper in here real quick. Skipper, thanks for doing this with me.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is a very fascinating time in America military history. So I'm really interested to see what these guests have to say.
And I'm glad that we decided to start this relatively early for us, and like before your normal get up time, because I know it's a weekend and you probably like to sleep in. So
I'm an early bird. The Marine Corps taught me to enjoy the sunrise.
Yeah, I slept in all the way to 6:15. So I have been trying to figure out how we were going to talk about this, because this really does fit in with my normal content on my own platform, but it also fits in with our content on Veteran Nation.
Absolutely.
And I think it's a story that needs to be told, because there are veterans from the attack on the USS Liberty who are still fighting to get this story out there, which is why we're going to be bringing on Larry and Phil, and hopefully Mickey, if he can get his technical stuff figured out. I have learned the older that we get, Skipper, the harder technology gets for us. So I want our audience to know that whether they're watching on my platforms or if they're watching on our platform, the Veteran Nation, through Right America Media or the new Right Network, we want them to reach out, and the links to their websites and other socials and whatnot will be in the description of these videos. And just for those of you that are watching, Skipper will be, I know how Skipper does things. He'll be downloading my content as it comes out and then re-streaming it onto our other platforms through Vet Nation. So you will be able to get a hold of these guys. You will be able to read more. If you haven't read up on this story, you may not need to after this is done, because this is going to be an insider look at what happened on that day and why it should really make us question always trusting the narrative. And for those of us that have been in the military, which is going to be all of us here, we always know that there's always a different story than what's told publicly. Skipper, you've seen that yourself numerous times. So let's bring in Larry and Phil as we wait for Mickey, and maybe Larry and Phil can get us started. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday. I don't know. Is Saturday a day off for you guys, or are you just both in that world now where every day is a day off?
I'm retired, so every day's a day off.
Well, he's rich, but no, I have to work for a living. No, I'm retired. I'm happily retired, living here alone with my wife, and got some kids and grandkids around. But fellas, it's a good time to be alive, especially for Larry and I, because we weren't supposed to be here. But I think that once we get done, you're going to have a better insight of what this country's done to us, what it's done to our mental and physical abilities. But this is hard hitting and it's
It's
one of the most,
emotional.
yeah, very emotional. It was one of the hardest. It's one of the most covered up secrets in American history, and nobody knows about it. But they are going to know about it. And uh, one other thing, if you don't mind, if I might add, the USS Liberty Veterans Association is we've got our own network now on Liberty Broadcasting at 2 o'clock every Saturday. And I don't know if you've ever heard of Liberty Broadcasting Network. Sam Bushman is the owner, and we'll be on there today at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. But we want to get the word out, like shows like yours. It's just incredible you having us on, and thank you kindly. And I'll shut up for now, but I have more to say later.
Um, Never mind the scroll down below. I'm self promoting, by the way. But we'll definitely be putting a link into the Liberty Network in the show description here on my YouTube and my Rumble, as well as on the Veteran Nation content. So just so you guys are aware, this is going to be airing in several parts on Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, both there again on YouTube and on Rumble, and also through several platforms that Skipper and I co-host Veteran Nation on. So let's go back to the weeks leading up to the day of the attack, because the day of the attack is important, but what's more important is who you guys were, what your tasking was, and what the Liberty was supposed to be doing in general. Because it's a warship, but it's not the Liberty wasn't a standard warship. It was communications, security, and monitoring, correct?
That's correct. It was an intelligence collector, one of 5 similar ships, and we were the most sophisticated of the 5. Our normal operating procedures were off the western coast of Africa. And in fact, when we got orders to report to the Med, we were actually in port in Abidjan, waiting for supplies, and we got the word to make best speed possible to Rota, Spain, to pick up supplies and personnel, and then head into the Eastern Mediterranean. So
best, just so people understand, back then the best speed for a ship like the Liberty was how many knots?
Well, they said 18 with every screw rattling, but so 18 knots was maximum. I think we were probably doing 16.
So you you guys, you were cruising for a ship.
Yes.
Yeah, but for those of us who have never been on a vessel that size, it looks pretty quick when you're on it, but ultimately that's slow going.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is pretty slow going. It took us several days to get from Abidjan on the Ivory Coast to Rota, Spain. I want to say it was 5 days, might have been 6.
And this was before the 6-day war had kicked off. It was just tensions at this point, correct?
That's correct.
Just before you go any further, Larry, and by the way, as you're watching this, Larry is old guy number 1 who's talking, and Phil is old guy number 2 is talking. And we're about to, I say that tongue in cheek because it's not very often that Skipper's the youngest guy in the room. There we go. I think we got Mickey.
I
Mickey,
can't
can you-
hear you guys again. I got it. I could hear you, but you couldn't see me.
Oh
I
no.
guess I'm not going to have to be part of this. I'm sorry.
Well, we tried, Mickey. Thank you very much.
I have no idea what to do. I got me back where you could see me anyways, but that was all.
Well, we can hear you now. If we could just learn.
Hey,
to
Phil
communicate.
and Larry, you guys can do a great job. I know you can.
Thank you, Mickey.
Phil, you know my story pretty good. Love you both.
Love you
All
too,
right.
brother.
Thank you.
Oh, we tried, right? The wonders of technology. Speaking of being technologically advanced, so you guys are resupplying, and now it's in. Did you say Spain?
Yes.
So your import in Spain, you're resupplying. You're being at this point. Do you know what you're being tasked with?
Not officially, no. We knew we were going into the Eastern Mediterranean, but our tasking was classified, so we just knew that they had changed our operations from the west coast of Africa to the Eastern Mediterranean.
So you knew what was going on. I mean, at that point, the tensions and the escalations that were taking place in the Middle East were not. I mean, everybody was aware. Even with a news cycle being far different in that day and age, people were still aware of what was going on.
Yeah, and those of us in the cryptologic community had a little better idea than Phil and the general service personnel. But we weren't able to say anything. So it was like, once again, they felt out of the loop because they didn't know why we had changed our course, and we couldn't really tell them.
When you were in port, you're loading up, and Skipper would understand a lot more of this. Even as a Marine, he's got more seagoing experience than I do. Even if he's never been to sea, he still has
One day.
which is there more than I have. You guys are loading up on supplies. You're aware of what's going on. You probably, even though you hadn't been told exactly where you were going, I'm pretty sure you had an inkling of what was happening. But this tasking that you guys got, you learned very quickly was going to be different than anything else you had ever experienced. And outside of the day of the event, you were used to traveling in a fleet.
No, we always travel as an independent.
But you were attached out to a fleet in the sense that you had backup at least semi-close.
Not when we were over in the Western Mediterranean or Western Africa.
Okay.
It was us all alone, and we would receive orders from Washington through broadcast. But once we got into the Med, we were supposed to be subordinate to the 6th Fleet, and our skipper had requested a destroyer escort to accompany us because of the tensions over in the Middle East. That request was denied, saying that, hey, we were a clearly marked American ship flying the American flag, and if we needed any kind of support, we would be within 15 minutes of air support from the 6th Fleet. So that was their rationale for not allowing us to have a destroyer escort us.
15 minutes for air support is still a pretty good distance off when you're dealing with what fighter craft were you guys dealing with at that day and age?
I'm going to say F-14s, but I'm not sure.
Okay. And so, Larry, just so people are aware, what was your tasking? What was your military occupation?
Okay, I was a cryptologic technician, radioman, second class, an E5, and my tasking was to set a manual Morse position and copy international Morse code, um, and report, the findings of, anything that I might have collected back to Washington so that they could have you know, a clearer picture of what was going on in the Middle East.
And Phil, what was your job? What did you do?
Yes, my job was I was an engineer. I was in damage control, firefighting, ship maintenance, about everything to do with basically, damage control because I went to a lot of firefighting schools and things like that, and I enjoyed it. And I never thought I'd have to use the skills like we did, but it ended up that way, and it was. I'm glad I got all the training we could. And by the way, our ship trained constantly, even before we did this. I got on board the Liberty in 1965, and I made the second cruise with D.D. Weiland. He was the commander of the ship. He was a full commander, and he was replaced by our current skipper, the Medal of Honor recipient, uh, McGonigal, Bill McGonigal. He's dead now, but he trains us too all the time, and it was well worth it. And we always felt like that we could handle a shipboard fire or anything like that.
So when you guys were underway, every day was training.
Every day, we trained a lot.
You go to war the way you train.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But we never
Oh,
thought
geez,
we were.
don't call me sir.
Yeah, we never thought we were going to go to war like we did. And as Larry mentioned, we really the ship's company. Our job was to take care of the communications technicians because that's why we were there. Like Larry said, it's one of the most sophisticated intelligence gathering ships in the world at that time. In fact, we could bounce signals off the moon back to National Security Agency in mere seconds if we couldn't decipher ourselves. And of course, I don't know a lot about that. Larry does, but you know, uh, the thing of it is the reason we're doing this, the reason we've been doing it for all these years, and thank God for technology because it has caught up to us where we can tell our story to millions of people.
Well, the technology that you guys were there to protect and use and defend at that time is the precursor to the technology that we're using right now.
That'd be my assumption. Yeah.
Without that technology having been put to use by guys like Larry and his crew, and you guys out there working to defend him and protect him and their technology, we wouldn't be here doing this today. And I was a communications guy in the Army, and I know I tell people that all the time. Like all that stuff that you guys use now, you take for granted as you walk around and hold your cell phones and your laptops and all of that. I'm like, you could thank us for that. So I want to throw a nod to Skipper since he's the only officer in the room. Did you guys have a Marine contingency on board for security since you were? I know the answer to this, but our audience isn't going to know this. Since you guys were such a high tech, high security clearance level of team, did you have a lot of security in place on that ship that day?
We picked up 3 Marines in Rota, Spain, but they weren't for security purposes. They were more for language support. Part of our communications was, related to foreign entities, and so their language skills were required to augment our current team. Now the spaces that we worked in were secure. We had a, cipher lock on the front door, and guys like Phil and the rest of the crew were not able to just automatically come in and enter that space without the proper clearances and the proper need to know. So to say that was security in place, yes, it was, but the Marines were there to do their job, which is linguistic skills.
Now, I do have a question, and just for clarification, because I'm pretty sure I know the answer. You guys were essentially doing a reconnaissance mission, but you were still fully operating with the American flag out. This was not a covert operation. You were wide out in the open, fully marked. This was not any type of like black op type of thing.
Right. No, absolutely. It was, haze gray underway. We had the ship's name emblazoned on the fantail. We had the AGTR 5 on
Fully
on the
identifiable.
forecastle. Everything flying the American flag.
So
Now,
for the non-Navy and civilian types, what's AGTR 5 mean?
Auxiliary. It's an auxiliary ship, geographical technical research number 5, which is the 5th ship in that classification.
right.
But we were an auxiliary ship, not a warship.
So you weren't armed with any type of artillery. You weren't armed with any kind of massive attack guns or anything like that.
No, we had 4 50 caliber machine guns, 2 forward and 2 aft. And
Okay, and for those of you who don't know, aft means back.
yeah, the primary purpose of those would have been for repelling boarders. There certainly weren't armament that could bring down another vessel, and so again, being an auxiliary ship and on an intelligence collection mission, you're not looking to get into a fight with another warship
Of any kind.
of any type, or
Not even, you didn't even have fake weapons, because sometimes in military, when you go into other areas, you try to sometimes make your ship look more than what it is, hoping that other ships will be deterred from attacking. But you had nothing other than those machine guns, no major arms.
no.
So you guys get underway. You get your tasking. You get told you're going down to, and so what, and either one of you can answer this. Where did they tell you to go? Where did you end up getting assigned to? What was your station at?
We were to be assigned 12 and a half nautical miles off the Sinai Peninsula in the Eastern Mediterranean. And we were to patrol up and down the coastline, staying within international waters.
So so people understand 12 and a half nautical miles is roughly 25 land miles for American speak. It's not, nautical miles are different than geographic in the sense of how we drive. They're longer.
Correct, but we were 12 miles off the coast, not nautical miles. 12 miles off the coast.
12 miles off the coast.
You could see the bombs dropping on the beach. You could see the black smoke. The reconnaissance aircraft the Israelis sent over, not once, twice, 4, 5, 6, 8 times. They knew exactly who they were attacking. But
So how far into the 6-day war did you guys arrive? Were you there ahead of time, or were you there a day after, a couple of days after?
It was actually the 4th day of the 6-day war.
When you guys arrived on station.
Right. We got on station on the morning of the 8th, and
And did you anchor, or were you patrolling during that?
We were patrolling.
Okay. So you were basically going out in that distance, that 12 and a half miles off the coast. You were going back and forth along the peninsula, monitoring activities, listening into communications for both sides, from the Israeli side and the Arab side.
Exactly.
And so you're four days in, right?
Right.
And that was which day was that? Was that that morning right away, or were you there for a day or so?
No, it was that morning when we arrived.
Okay.
And earlier that morning, right at sunrise, they started overflying us, as Phil mentioned, over a half a dozen times with reconnaissance aircraft, so that they knew exactly who we were and what we were doing out there. In their war room, they actually put a marker on our war room to indicate that we were there early in the morning. So for them to think that by 2 that afternoon we'd be moving anywhere out of the area was pretty unbelievable.
And for those who are not familiar with the 6-Day War, I do want it to be known that very quickly the Israelis established air superiority during that war. And we're talking, this is about 3 to 4 days into it. So the Israelis own the skies at this point. They have full eyes on everything.
Right.
I think Egypt was the last air power in the area to be engaging with Israel, weren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was pretty early on, because the Israelis, well, they were expert. I don't know how it happened, but somebody trained Israeli pilots to fly really well. And that might have been a little sarcastic on my part, so my apologies. So the Israelis establish air superiority. They take out the Arab coalition's air forces, basically. You guys are there day 4. You arrive on scene. How early in the morning did you arrive?
Phil, I don't know. Maybe you
Well-
have a better idea than that.
Well, we were there. We were in the area probably about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and daylight comes, and here come the reconnaissance aircraft with the Star of David on them, and we knew exactly who they were. They knew who we were. We felt very comfortable. I know I wasn't worried a bit. I was worried more about the Arabs coming to get us. I mean, for God's sakes, Israel's our number one spoon-fed ally. They certainly
Right.
wouldn't attack American ship. And I would like to say, if you don't mind,
You say whatever you want, brother.
thank you, sir. The survivors have been on this mission for a long time, trying to get our Congress or any president. And for 55 years, not one president and a few congressmen did come out and help us. Paul Finley, Pete McCluskey, and a few others. Jim Traficant. But with all that being said, it's been squashed. Now, what we're doing, the survivors are calling out the Congress, the President of the United States, the Navy, the CIA, National Security Agency, FBI, State Department, and the Zionist State of Israel. Reasons: lying to the American public as well as the uninformed citizens of Israel and the world. The attack was never a case of mistake in identification. It was, in fact, an attack, cold-blooded, premeditated murder, planned attack, sanctioned by the United States government, covered up by LBJ and his minions then, and as well as it's being covered up today. And we're here as eyewitnesses to tell them that they never did have an investigation. They said they had 5, 6, 7 investigations, and never in congressional investigation. They never had one, and they tell the public and they tell us it was a mistaken identity. How dare you? Now you're going to listen to us, because we got the media now, we got technology, and you're not going to stifle us. We're coming after you, and we're going to tell these people exactly what happened, and you better listen to us, because we can change this country with this story, we can change this country.
Well, I appreciate you lumping me into the category of media. I don't. On some level, yes. I hope we're doing a better job than the rest of the media on this one. So,
Well, I use the word media very loosely. Okay.
oh, okay. Um, so you guys arrive about 2-3 in the morning, and I'm not, and don't take this as me downplaying your arriving, but you kind of come into this like you were saying, like, hey, this isn't our war. We're just here to monitor. Really, ultimately, what we're going to end up doing, if need be, is going to back up our allies, the Israeli Defense Forces, be
Well,
their
Larry can
air
speak to
force, their
this.
ground forces, their armor movements, their naval flotilla, whatever it might be. We're going to be here to help them out because they're fighting this by themselves. Granted, they've got predominantly American equipment, but they're doing this on their own. The United States isn't getting involved. Not that the U.S. needed to help them because they handled things readily. So you guys are kind of at this going, okay, it's a situation, we need to be on alert, but it's not like you were on edge the entire time.
No, we were, the skipper had us at what they call wartime cruising. So we knew that we were in a war zone. We knew that there was, certainly danger all around us. But our cover story, if you will, for being over there was to aid with communications for the U.S. Embassy and also provide a platform for bringing on civilians that might have to leave the country because of the war. So those were the two areas that they said, if anyone asks, that's what you're over here doing. When in fact, our mission was to collect communications regarding the war and reporting it back to national agencies. So,
which is what you were trained to do.
Exactly.
And you guys had prepared for this because you always trained as if you were training to go to war. So this day was really ultimately kind of no different for you as a crew on the Liberty than any other. In fact, as you had already said, Phil, you had already had contact with Israeli intelligence by way of reconnaissance planes that had flown over you. There's no way they didn't recognize who you were.
No, in fact, they sent back to the headquarters. This is an American ship, American and friendly. As Larry said at the beginning of the show, they had us on their war table as American. It's USS Liberty. They know exactly who they were. They said they changed the watch, and for some odd reason, they scooted us out of the way, and we didn't exist anymore. So that was their way of saying, "Whoops, we got an unidentified ship here, and it must be Russian or Egyptian."
Which
And
Egyptian ships were Russian, so there was
Yeah.
no, even visually, you can't really mistake a Russian ship for an American ship during this time period.
the ship they tried to say we were was the El Quasir. It was a horse transport that was almost sunk in Alexandria. It was an old piece of junk, and it was a little ship, and ours is 350 foot long. And theirs was 120 to 150.
Which is ultimately still pretty small for an American ship.
Yeah, well, 350. Yeah, of course, there's a lot bigger ones, but no, I mean it was a pre-planned attack to get us in the area, sink us fast, blame it on the Arabs, and who knows what happens. I do know this: we were close to World War III within seconds. I think Larry will agree with that.
So before, and I don't want to cut you off, so don't take that as me being pushy, but when did it go south? About what time, and who first became aware that it was going south?